Congratulations.
I think we are
You
recording.
are so
Yes,
Zoom
we are.
clever.
Lucky, better lucky than good. How about that? So it looks like we're recording.
Awesome. Hey, we might as well fire things up. It's 1 o'clock. Let's get started, everybody. Hey, I'm Tom Vander Ark from Getting Smart. Thanks for joining us. We've got some of America's best system heads here. We're also joined by Kim Smith from the League of Innovative Schools. She leads a network of America's 100 most innovative school districts. So we're going to have a great conversation. I'm going to organize the conversation sort of past, present, and future. I want to situate our dialogue initially around what these two districts have done to frame a learner-centered environment. So before I start, if you guys mute yourself if you're not talking, once we dive in, I'll welcome comments. We are going to try to the chat window, and we'll try to keep this as interactive as possible. But I'm going to kick things off with one of my favorite superintendents, Pat Deklotz from the Kettle Moraine School District. It's suburban Milwaukee district. It's one that I bring a lot of people to because it's Pat has created a really thoughtful environment. She's made really great use of some micro schools to launch the transformation in her district, and is really a leading thinker in professional learning. But Pat, would love to have you describe the sort of learning experiences and environments in Kettle Moraine and how you think about this notion of being learner-centered.
I would love to, and thank you so much, Tom, for asking me. The only thing is I have to correct you, and I rarely ever correct Tom Vander Ark, but it was not me, it was we that created this environment, and I have a great team of educators.
You do
that,
you have an amazing team.
Yeah, so we have all worked hard to really focus on why we do what we do, which is the learner. And we have about a third of our students that are educated in a charter learning environment. Tom would call it a micro school environment. And we've learned a tremendous amount over the past 10, 11 years through those smaller learning environments. Things that support the social, emotional, and identity of students as they own their learning. And we would say that the work that we've done in those smaller learning environments really puts the onus, the responsibility for learning on the learner. It engages them in making choices and in demonstrating competencies, and it's had a tremendous influence on all the other schools that perhaps are perceived as more traditional. And I would say that learners throughout Kettle Moraine are very clear in understanding the expectation that we have for them to graduate with the skills and dispositions that are defined in our graduate profile. And our teachers, not 100%, but they have, I would say by and large, they have an understanding that we see technology as a tool that supports teachers in making better decisions about individual learners. And the expectation across the district is that we look at each learner and we do our best to meet their individual needs on a learning continuum rather than teaching to the middle. We're very much focused on demonstrations of mastery or competency rather than a bell curve, if you will. And we've redefined the way that students progress through learning based upon that understanding that they have to demonstrate competency. You will not get out of Algebra 1 to go on to geometry or algebra 2 unless you're competent. And so it takes some students longer than others.
Thanks, Pat. I included a great chat that we had a couple of weeks ago about high school transformation there in the chat line. Great example of using micro schools to pilot these new learning environments and then allowing them to spread as other learners, teachers, and parents see the benefit. I'll come back in just a minute, Pat, for an update on Kettle Moraine, but let me turn to David Miyashiro. David's the superintendent in Cajon Valley. It's a neighborhood east of San Diego, really a high challenge, wonderful, diverse neighborhood. David's district is a K-8 district. We call it the best example of career education, integrated career education in America. Kids not only learn about careers, but they have the opportunity in each of those units to reflect on their strengths, interests, and values. So it's one of our favorite places to visit. David, describe how you and your team have really transformed Cajon Valley in the last decade.
Thank you, and good to see you, Tom, and everybody. We really leaned into the community and our community leaders. El Cajon and the Cajon Valley is a really wonderful collaboration of business leaders, government, faith leaders, and military leaders. And when I first got here to Cajon Valley, I asked every person that I came into contact with, what would you do with the district if it was under your jurisdiction? And our city manager was the first person that told me, stop stigmatizing the most important work in our city and community. And learning more about the community, we're huge in development and manufacturing. We have large employment in Department of Defense with the Marines and Navy. Our police chief, our fire chief, all work for the city. Our chamber of council is very engaged. And all of them in their own way said that you don't validate the work that we do, and you're showing kids that there's no path to do what we do. And that was really hard feedback. It was also at a time when we're seeing enormous amounts of student loan debt and leaning into why is that happening? Why are kids starting college and not finishing? And also we have what's called opportunity youth here in San Diego, and that's labeled ages 16 to 24, kids that are not in school and not working. And listening to city leaders, we said, you know what, that's the school system's fault. And then we leaned into leaders around our community on workforce and asked, how do we solve that? And we met Ed Hidalgo at the top floor of Qualcomm, who had created a Think a Bit lab there, which taught kids about the world of work and strengths, interests, and values. I was also on the board of Junior Achievement that created this one-day experience where kids can come in and be part of the mini world of work with our city businesses and locales there. And both the 5th graders and 8th graders would say, that was my favorite day of school ever. And we thought every day should be every kid's favorite day of school ever. And so we took those two experiences and we combined them into a comprehensive career development program wrapped around our TED presentation literacies, where our kids start to give TED Talks in kindergarten. And we started to deliver on our vision of happy kids engaged in healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment.
David, I love that that mission statement. Do two things for me. Repeat the mission statement, because it's really cool and it really captures your spirit. And then tell us a little bit more about why the TED Talks, because you really think deeply about what that's about. But repeat your mission again.
The mission is to create the best place to live, work, play, and raise a family. And that's something that our mayor would say, the president of our chamber would say, every business leader would say. And our vision here is happy kids engaged in healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment.
Yeah, and the TED Talks are so cool, right? It's part of the way you think about identity development, that kids really begin to share their story, right?
It's really, yeah, it's a social emotional learning curriculum, and that it's really the kids' ideas and how they view the world. And when you have kids sharing those stories with each other in a safe environment facilitated by a teacher, you start to really learn about each other. where that came from was in 2014, I got to give a TED talk on our blended and personalized learning at San Diego State. And it was the first time someone asked me to turn in a script and slides months before I was going to speak. And I said, I'm good. I'll be ready. And they said, well, you don't need to participate then. And then I learned about the TED brand and how TEDx works and the coaching that a speaker gets. And that process was something that I thought, if we can give this to our students starting in kindergarten, imagine how they'll be able to articulate their stories by the time they leave us in 12th grade.
Yeah, no, I love that, David. One of the last times I was there, I stumbled into a 4th grade classroom where they were doing a session on immigration, and they had kids from 4 different countries telling their personal story, and it was so powerful. And you could see the influence of that TED preparation, that they were really grounded in personal stories and able to share those with a lot of articulation. Pat, we would love to come back to you and just talk about what's happening in Kettle Moraine now, and how in this this crazy shift to remote learning, you're trying to keep learners at the center.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sure, like many others that are participating, that shift came very dramatically. We announced on a Friday that on Monday we would be going virtual with our 6th through 12th grade learners, and that happened. And a week later, all of our elementary students, those that needed to get a device or a hotspot access at home, we were able to survey parents, configure devices, get things into hands without the interchange of hands and touching and all of that. And I'm very happy to say that I have an incredible team that was able to do a very heavy lift in a very short period of time. It was really interesting to hear some of the comments, because I was hearing from parents and community members and people who had children in other districts that for a good number of our families, it was very seamless because of the familiarity that their students had with technology tools and devices. And that brought a lot of reassurance to some very nervous parents. I think one of the biggest challenges that we've faced as a district is the fact that our parents are in many ways serving 3 roles simultaneously. They're an employee, they're a parent, and now they're pseudo teaching, right? And for our teachers, it's very, very similar. They're still a full-time teacher, and they have kids at home and spouses at home and everyone working, and being the parent and being the supporter for their children's learning. The stress level is probably as high as I've ever experienced, which focuses us on, and we came back very quickly to, we have got to tell people, enjoy your children. The academics will come. I have no doubt the academics will come and will be there to support you, to support them. But this is really a time when your children need to be first and foremost. You need to be able to eat dinner with them, to play with them, to relax with them, to hold them accountable. Get schedules put into place, because children, just like adults, love schedules. Take breaks. Do not sit in front of a computer 8 hours a day, 4 hours a day. It's too much. And to send these messages, to try to make personal connections with parents, with students, just to give our teachers the expectation that they needed to make sure that they were giving a balanced message about the importance of the social emotional. That was probably the #1 thing we learned right out the gate.
Pat, one reason that I think you guys made the shift relatively smoothly is, for 10 years you've been talking about adaptability, design thinking, resilience. That was really an important part of your culture, and I think the districts that have made that Central have moved more quickly into, not that it was easier, but it was just part of the culture in Kettle Moraine that I think facilitated that. Let me jump over to David and just get a quick update on Cajon Valley and how things are going. You're another district that I think has made resilience and adaptability and design thinking central to your culture. Was that part of what facilitated your movement to remote learning, David?
Actually, it ties in with our vision statement. So happy kids, healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment. We have a vision for our employees, happy employees engaged in healthy relationships, enjoying their employment. And so our first step was to reach out to all of our employees through our principals and say, how are we doing? Check in on your people. I want to report back, who's hurting, who's not, how are everyone? And then at the same time, we reached out to all of our PTA presidents and brought our parent leadership community together to check in on our families, let them know that we continue our meal service, that we put our Chromebooks, all the settings were in place so that the kids could log into their single sign-on and get access to all their programs. It's optional. We just want to know that you're fine and well, and your child's teacher will be checking in on them soon. So focus on human connection and flexibility was what our parents and our staff asked for, and to care about them, which we do deeply. And that was so easy to do.
David, just say a few words about the challenges of primary versus the intermediate and middle grades.
Sure. Because we didn't rush, and I like the phrase, be quick but don't hurry, from Coach Wooden, we put some things quickly online for kids to access, and we also got the meal service out by volunteers, but we didn't rush to put permanent things in place. We wanted to give a period of adjustment to see what was happening. Several districts rushed to put things out, and so we saw some of our own employees, their kids getting calls from 7 different teachers, 7 different assignments, and not according to any particular schedule, really adding more stress to the children and the families at home than help through the academic good intentions. And so talking with parents through the process of what they were seeing with their relatives and family friends, they asked, we want guidance. We don't want it to be done to our kids. We want to do it with our teachers. And we'd like to have maybe one point of contact. So synthesizing what they said, we moved to Big Picture Learning's advisory model. And we've been working with Elliot and Keith already on some of the practices. And so, and rather than have middle school teachers teach 150 kids, so that's not manageable, let's just stick with your advisory, connect with your kids deeply and well on a regular basis every day if you can, and then we'll help them through their playlists, which we curated through the district office from a central push out so that our teachers didn't have to plan and design curriculum. They could spend most of the time on Zoom with their individual and groups of kids and parents.
Thanks, David. Let me turn to Kim Smith. Again, Kim leads the League of Innovative Schools. It's 100 of the nation's most innovative school districts. It's a project of Digital Promise, digitalpromise.org. Kim, maybe you could describe is there a core philosophy to the districts that join League of Innovative Schools? What do you think are the key design principles that really draw your network together?
Thanks, Tom, and so great to be here with Pat and David. I'm one of their #1 fans, and I'm loving hearing their stories because honestly, what they're sharing represents the DNA of Digital Promise and the League. The work that we do really focuses on researching and showcasing how school districts are addressing challenges through innovative teaching and learning practices. So since its inception, the League has been a network of districts, and today we're 114
Wow.
across the country, all shapes, all sizes, rural, urban, suburban, which really makes up the fabric of our work and allows us to represent and showcase innovative teaching and learning in different contexts. So these folks are designing and implementing models and tools and frameworks to really advance equity and excellence for over 3 million kids across the country. As you heard from David, the work is centered in educators, communities, students. We bring in researchers and developers as a complement to ensure these solutions are aligned, and we also bring in the work to support the evidence base around the R&D. And so this is the work that these folks are doing and how they're navigating this challenge. Words such as resilience, adaptability, community-centered, human connection is really part of how the League looks at addressing challenges. I will mention to you, just to put in a plug for the Digital Promise Challenge map, because that is the result of 2 years of research, where we've identified 35 plus challenges. And that really represents the core of where we start.
Yeah, give us a couple examples. What's on the map? What kind of priorities your district members have?
Sure. So there's 9 thematic areas ranging from core curriculum focus around reading and mathematics and STEM, also social emotional learning, equity, infrastructure, and human capital. So the challenge map really covers the landscape of challenges, and for each one, we've really looked at the research and tried to unpack what the districts are experiencing, what solutions they are putting in place, and what the research is saying.
John Carver was asking about whether and how learning is being connected to student passions. I know David can speak to that, but do you have any of your member networks that are thinking hard about connecting student interest with career pathways?
Absolutely. So we categorize real world learning as ways to connect students to opportunities to experience both everything from internships to engaging in mentorships, et cetera. And just last year, we launched our real world learning roadmap and tools for districts. And there are a large majority of districts in the League who have real world learning programs that they are implementing in addition to the work that David's doing with World of Work, which has been incredible because David's work is fanning out to districts across the country. But yes, that is a real focus for the work of the League.
David, could you talk a little bit more about World of Work, and then we'll have Pat follow you on that, but just describe what World of Work looks like in Cajon.
Yeah, so funny story, on the back wall, our modern curriculum, you see computer science there, the code.org symbol. Prior to meeting Ed, I was sold that every student in my district was going to learn cybersecurity and computer science and take over the tech hub of San Diego. And I met Ed. He said, no, I have so many miserable engineers that I'm trying to counsel out of their career into a happy life. And then was introduced to Holland's Ryesack theory and the super strong that the Myers-Briggs gives to help young people and adults find their interest through assessment. And what we learned is that kids that don't have enough life experiences won't have a good sense of their interest early enough to make good decisions about post-secondary. And so it's not just about having a conversation about what you're interested or what you like, it's really giving kids hands-on experiences in different interest areas as they relate to career.
And not even just hands-on, but they're fully immersive. These are big units of study that are often a week to a month long, that involve simulation and full immersion, extended projects, multiple connections with experts, both in person and on NEPRA. So, right, it's a deep opportunity to step into a career and then imagine a possible future, right, as our friend Ed Hidalgo would say.
Right. Can I give you one anecdote?
Please.
So most kids, before they reach the career simulation of the veterinarian, want to be a veterinarian because they love animals. when they realized that that's involves putting animals to sleep and cutting them open and doing some things that they would never want to do to animals,
Right.
they realized there are other careers where I can work with animals that aren't that, because that's
Yeah.
an investigative career and a realistic career. I want to be more social and artistic. So it really is a common language for students to start articulating who they are and what they might like to do.
Yeah, that's a great example. My dad got me a job as a hospital intern when I was in high school, and I figured out that I didn't like blood, and so I didn't go to med school. Thank goodness for that real world learning, right?
You were lucky.
Right, and we have a lot of kids that waste time, and they've never had the opportunity to do a full immersion like your kids do in K-8. So, Pat, what does learner-centered career education mean in Kettle Moraine?
Maybe not quite as formalized as what David has, but one of the things that I really believe strongly is that everyone has areas of passion, and we need our students to understand that they can find their area of passion and learn through that area of passion. That word is a good, rich word. And when I was in the classroom and I looked at some of my at-risk students, they were passionate about very strange things. It might have been poker. It might have been rats. It might have been cars. But they were really good in an area that school didn't value. Every student needs to know that they have value and they have a place, and the world needs their gifts. And so from elementary through middle through high school, that's part of our quest, is to help students have that opportunity to explore their passion. And when it comes to careers, it is extremely valuable to know what you don't want to do. As you kind of alluded to, Tom, you know, we have a High School of Health Sciences, and if a student learns through their rich experiences in the healthcare field that they don't want to be in healthcare, what a great revelation, because it's one of the most expensive career pathways you can go into.
Yeah.
And if you learn, you can do that through the skills of a technical college or community college. What a great way to have an impact without that financial burden.
Hey, so, Pat, our friend Corey Moan jumped in here. Corey runs the CAPS network. A lot of you know CAPS is a national network of professions-based learning. And Corey just said, try it out, rule it out, which is, right?
Absolutely. Hey, hi, Tom. It's good to see you.
Hey, good to see you. What would you add about learner-centered career education? What are you seeing your members doing?
Yeah, well, I agree with everything that I've heard thus far, and you know, this idea of self-discovery time for students, which is what I heard a little bit of there,
right?
And also pairing that with exploration, so you can kind of get to know your strengths, your vulnerabilities, your motivations. But then you have to apply that to context. So how do you get out of the four walls of school? How do you get the community back into your building as well?
Right.
And allow for that exploration time, because that feeds off of your self-discovery and allows you to understand how to best deploy.
So I hear sort of time and space and options for kids. Our friend Corey Scholes from the Kauffman Foundation is on, and the Kauffman Foundation is sponsoring the biggest high school reimagination in America. It's called Real World Learning. And the Kauffman Foundation has invited 25 school districts and about 100 high schools to infuse more real world learning that invites them into internships and community connected projects and entrepreneurial experiences. So all of these are valuable experiences for young people that are related to something that they see as an interest, and it may be something they decide to follow, or as Corey, as you said, they may try it out and then rule it out. Kim, let me jump back to you and the League of Innovative Schools. Any other examples that you'd like to pull in from your membership?
Absolutely. We've been hosting calls with our members over the past month and have been able to really learn not only about the challenges, but hear some of the work that they're doing that showcases some of the adaptability, if you will. So some examples that I can share, our friends at Utah School for the Deaf and Blind, Joel Coleman, superintendent out there, when you think about it, the work that they're doing is really at the heart of personalized learning, is thinking about how to adapt to the students that they serve. And virtualizing that experience is an interesting endeavor. And Joel has shared with us that his team went out before the district shut down and actually went into the homes of the families to set up technology and to train teachers in preparation. And because they have assistive and adaptive technologies. But it's been a really interesting experience where they've had to bring not only the Zooms and the packets of learning and all these other pieces, but also think really creatively about how to really service their students. They have an online school for the deaf. They're working with blind students in various capacities online. They have a teacher there who's creating videos of himself doing lessons, sending them to parents, so parents can see the modeling of the lessons as they are supporting their kids. And so there's some really interesting work that's happening there. Also, Bristol Warren in Rhode Island, Alza County in Kentucky. These are two districts that have robust externship and internship programs. And they have been able to continue to support students in that capacity through virtualizing those internships through the end of the year. So there's been some really interesting engagement with students having these real world experiences in a virtual way, which is interesting to think about.
Jim, let me ask David if he wants to jump in here and give a shout out to any Kentucky districts.
Kentucky districts.
No, I think he's talking to a different David.
Thank
Yeah, Tom. Well, Kimberly actually already did one, which I'm very excited. The thing that's important about Owsley County is our original non-traditional instruction district in Kentucky. Kentucky has had a remote learning program for 9 years. Owsley County was the first and continues to be a powerful influence because of them being one of the 20th poorest counties in the country. And what they have done with remote learning in a very limited, because of the access problems that they have with connectivity, has been powerful. What I really wanted to say, Tom, is the great partnerships, and I know these are happening all over the country, that we're having with our PBS affiliate in Kentucky. They have bent over backwards. They actually took their primary channel. They've got like 4 different PBS channels that they operate. Their number one channel from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. is all educational programming, has been since March 16th. So those who don't have a computer but have a television can get important curriculum and instructional resources. So, but yes, Owsley County and others are doing some tremendous.
David, we appreciate your leadership in Kentucky. John Carver said we need to shift gears. Enough of this looking backwards. What's over the horizon? So, David Miyashiro, I want to ask you to kick us off with what is the new way forward? That's the name of this conference. But when I guess one part of your answer is you're even thinking about adding a high school, right? So that's part of your way forward is.
Yes, we are. We are in the final stages of a New Schools Venture Fund grant, which we hope to announce shortly, and have been working with Big Picture on some ideas about how to continue the learning for our students beyond 8th grade.
What do you think? What would you like to see that'll be different and better about Cajon Valley post-pandemic?
Well, I'm hoping that the league can play a role, Kim. I'm looking at you, and get us together on this policy issue. All the things that we've been banging our heads against in terms of compliance and testing, and we heard that in the last keynote, And in California A through G requirements, which is the ultimate testament to standardization as you know it, we've been saying free us from these things, and we've been freed from everything. The last thing we should do is put any of these measures or flexibilities back into place. We need to keep the flexibility, and I think double down on what parents are asking for.
Yeah.
Flexibility, choice, know my child and care for them, and help them develop the human and career pathways to be a successful adult.
David, I want to ask you a tough question, and I'm hoping Pat can add this to her answer. So I was around 20 years ago when A to G came in, and a lot of us thought it was a good idea because inequity in high school offerings and the way we were tracking high schools was a big problem. So A to G was an equity focused answer to making sure that every high school in the state had access to college prep. So how do we create this learner-centered path forward, but do it in a way that is equitable and has all kids in mind? How do you think about that tension?
The way I think about it is moving the goalpost back in terms of how we measure success, and also moving the career exposure and self-awareness curriculum up into K through 8, so that kids can be intentional and spend time in their interest areas aligned with career pathway by the time they're in high school. So someone who's going to pursue an artistic and social enterprising career in law as an attorney, they should spend time in the humanities and Shakespeare and literacies and things that will help them. Maybe not 4 years of math, maybe 2.
Yeah.
Someone that's going to go into math and sciences probably should take advanced, math and pre-calculus and learn in those areas, but maybe not spend so much time in the humanities or the other areas. And I think that's why Gallup student engagement polls show that 3 out of 4 students are disengaged by the time they graduate. They don't see the relevance of school anymore.
Yeah. The equity that I feel in Cajon is that you're inviting every young person from kindergarten on to imagine possible futures. So you've had this 54 learning cycles between kindergarten and 8 where you've invited them into possible futures. So every kid there is really, in a comprehensive and equitable way, been invited to consider different pathways. That feels like part of the answer, right?
Yeah.
Pat, what's your take on that? How do we square an interest in a learner-centered future with a deep commitment to equity?
Well, I think part of it, and hopefully I don't offend anyone with this, but I've been known to offend people before. Part of what I think is really important when you look at this is who gets to define what success is. So I think part of what I resent about the public education system is that the educators have said we know how to define success, and it doesn't fit all kids. And where is that learner voice in saying, this is how I define success? So it's very complementary to what David was saying, that not everyone needs the same thing, but we have defined education through buckets of compliance that totally divorces the voice of the student from the narrative. And that's wrong. We have to engage that student voice, that individual voice, in assuming responsibility for their pathway. Like, they're not something on an assembly line to put out. We have to help them understand their place in the world, their gift to the world, and how they're going to navigate that. But I've yet to meet a child that doesn't have hopes and dreams. What we do to those hopes and dreams can sometimes be very embarrassing, if not wrong.
Amen.
So, engaging the student and having them own their part of the world, they love that. It's really about, I think, respecting who the students are and giving them opportunities. Doesn't mean they won't make mistakes or that they won't, learn what they don't want to do. That's a good thing. But to give them the guidance that, as David said, you like engineering or you like computer science, you better get some mathematics in there. Chances are they're going to love mathematics, especially if they know the why behind it. But when kids don't know the why, they are going to disengage. You help them to build it.
Let me ask you a quick question. Lori McEwen asked, she wondered if anybody worried about starting kids too early on pathways, and part of your high school strategy has been introduced a Global Studies Academy, a Health Academy, a Performing Arts Academy. How do you, if a parent asks you this, hey, isn't it too soon for my kid to make a choice in 8th as they're going into 9th grade? What's your take on that?
So I would say it would be wrong if we didn't give them the flexibility to make another choice. To say I want to earn my high school diploma through the lens of performing arts, it doesn't mean I'm going to be in the performing arts. It means I have a passion for my clarinet, and I want to be a brain surgeon, but I have a passion for my clarinet. I don't want to lose that or leave that behind. You know, if we tracked kids into a career, to me, that is not a career pathway.
Right.
So that's the difference.
I think our friend Kenny Rodriguez said you have to allow for exploration and then allow for a safe place for them to make changes. So I think he's echoing that sentiment. Thanks, Kenny. And David, you would echo that as well.
Yeah,
I've talked to learners in Cajon that are pretty clear in 4th grade. They know what they want to do, but then in 5th grade it changes, right? You invite that continual reassessment.
Yeah, the language we use is in the primary grades, it's career exposure. In the middle grades, more exploration. And in the high school, we'd like to see intentionality. So as kids complete their FSAID with our personal finance curriculum in middle school and start to think about their post-secondary options and financing those post-secondary options, they should be intentional before they apply to college, what it is they want to do with their degree or post-secondary experience. That way we get 100% return on investment for our young people before they leave the system.
That's great. Kim Smith, on the path forward, how are your districts thinking about the learner center path forward?
Well, I think that there's, one thing that's been really, I don't know if it's eye-opening what the phrase is, but the idea that school, community, and home are just merged together in this space is really interesting to think about. What does that mean for designing learning for the future? Because the reality of it is that the student's ecosystem, if you're centering in the student's ecosystem, it consists of these 3 entities: school, community, and home. And I do wonder if we're blurring those lines right now, and they should be blurred. And so how do we think about learning where we're actually starting to design learning experiences that are really centered around the student's ecosystem as a holistic approach to learning? And I think there's some real interesting work that can be done there. I will say, Tom, also on the inequity piece of this, I mean, obviously, there's just all sorts of considerations that we have to think about. But I do want to posit that if we had centered the design of learning 10 or 20 years ago with communities that are underserved at the center, would we have reached a point today where we have 15 million kids that can't access learning digitally? So I want us to think about how we need to turn towards those that are being served for the solutions.
David, who's Build on Strengths? Is that you, David? Is that Miyashiro? Did you,
David Cook?
Is that your comment or David Cook?
That's my comment.
No, I like that idea, because we don't want to get stuck thinking about pathways to old jobs that used to exist, right?
Right. When I went to David's schools and visited them, that's what I was taking away from it. And he doesn't remember this probably, but he and I actually had a conversation about the different quote programs that build on kids' strengths. There's Gallup, and there's you guys use help me. But the idea that what we should be doing with kids as early as we possibly can is helping them discover their uniqueness and helping them discover what they are good at, not what they are okay at, what their strengths are, and then use that to help them create for themselves a perfect set of help them be self-advocates of their own abilities, because they're going into a world where the gig economy is saying, I'm going to do this for 2 years and this for 2 more years and this for 2. I just need to sell my.
Yeah, whether they go to work for somebody else or themselves, they're going to be expected to create their own opportunity, right?
And adapt.
Identify opportunities and deliver value for a community.
And adapt. As you know, I like that word, Tom.
It's great. Pat, anything else on the path forward? What do you think is going to be different post-pandemic?
Well, never waste a good pandemic, right? Never waste the opportunity to learn through adversity. And I think we have a tremendous opportunity. I do not believe in my district for sure school will ever be the same again. And certainly not for the short term. The impact of at-home learning has a place. And rather than divorcing families from my community to homeschool, how do we support learners, whether they're medically fragile, whether it's because a class has had exposure to COVID-19 and we need to quarantine for 14 days, whatever it is, we are going to have to enter this next school year and next school years, I believe, with a new level of commitment or responsibility to educating all children in multiple ways. Certainly the importance of the social emotional, I think, has come out loud and strong in that our students want to see their classmates, even if it's on a Brady square, right? They want to have social interactions even in a virtual world. And what does that look like? I think another thing that really is a lever, and my district's been trying to move towards more competency or mastery-based progressions. When you're not having a student sit in a seat, the idea of seat time is kind of gone, right? It's pretty much lost. So I think there's a huge opportunity or advantage to really look at how do students demonstrate that they're able to go to that next level, that they have the competence and it's not simply a rote answer. So I think there's a lot of changes coming ahead because of this, and we will learn some really deep and rich lessons if we take the time, like this is an opportunity, to reflect on what we're seeing, both the good and the bad, and incorporate that into our planning as we move forward.
This is I'll start with Kim, but anybody else on the panel or in the audience can respond to this. I've speculated that 500,000, maybe a million kids and their families will have new interest in new options after this, options that are more learner-centered, that are more flexible, that are more dynamic, that are more competency-based. Kim, do you think your district members are going to see that sort of demand for new options? Are you hearing about that?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think the options will be in the physical space and the digital space.
Right.
I think it will, and the blend of the two and the integration of the two. And I think that, yeah, absolutely, Tom. We're hearing ways in which parents, in being closer to the learning, if you will, are going to be expecting, as well as students, to have more personalized experiences, more things that are targeted on their interest, and we're starting to see that resonate throughout the league.
Yeah, it seems clear there's going to be a couple 100,000 families that just move to homeschooling. There's going to be a couple 100,000 families that I think will move to a homeschooling that sits on top of a virtual school that a district runs or a statewide organization runs. There's going to be a couple 100,000 that are looking for a hybrid. That's a 2 or 3 day a week flex program. There's going to be families that move into co-op situations. It does seem clear that there's a lot of parents that are very interested in having a place to send their kids at least 2 or 3 days a week, right? That the child
If
care.
I could jump in on that,
Yeah,
Tom.
please.
You know, I think it will force institutions of education to rethink their delivery system through the
Right.
lens of the learner and the parent. Whereas we've pretty traditionally organized it through the lens of the teacher and the
Yeah.
institution. And, you know, if you are only able to educate half of your students at a time in order to have social distancing, are you organizing that around the alphabet? Are you how are you meeting the needs of a family that may need to get back into the workplace, right? And so that even that whole idea of scheduling, will it be a more thematic type of multi-age learning environment? Because these 3 kids in this family are going to be here on this day, and these 3 kids won't be, right? I mean, it really challenges all of the mental models that we've used to build education.
Yeah. Kavita's wondering how we could extend this conversation to families. I wonder if any of you are thinking about holding community conversations that that surface these interests and co-construct new options. You see that, Pat?
We are definitely doing that.
That's great.
Just put that out to my principals to give me names of parents that they think would be willing to be a part of a sample of that. And I think
That's
we
great.
need to scale it. So,
Yeah.
you know, getting that parent voice into some of the pluses and minuses,
Yeah.
really important part.
And David and Cajon, you were having these community conversations particularly about high school options already before this all broke. So I imagine you'll be having more community conversations about what's possible in the future.
Yeah, last night, actually, we had a call with all of our PTA presidents again to get their feedback on distance learning and meal service. And we just launched a program for free childcare for emergency and essential workers in our community. And what they're telling us is they want to keep the flexibility and choice. One of our teachers put a post out there on Twitter, and she asked her class, what do you actually like about distance learning? And some of the cute things they said was, I get to play with my toys while I'm learning, or I get to work at my own pace, or
Yeah.
I get to hold my dog. Little things that, you know, I think that as districts look to go back to
Yeah.
these word that's planning to fail.
Yeah, David, there was a Edutopia post today on the fact that remote learning is working for some kids, at least some aspects of it, right? The time shifted nature, more interest-based learning, more competency-based has been pleasant for some young people. So, right, how to surface that, how to create options that embrace more of that feels like part of the path forward.
Yeah.
Tara from Denver is advocating that Denver public schools begin to have this conversation. So love to hear that. Corey Moen from CAPS, do you think folks in your network are going to be holding more community conversations about options?
Absolutely. And in some ways, this has accelerated our idea of how you create a profession-based learning model in a blended fashion and make it authentic, which I think has always been the trick, is how do you make it authentic when you can't be right there with that industry partner?
Yeah.
We're already seeing it. In fact, here in a couple of weeks, May 11th, we have a partner of ours, an affiliate in Iowa, Cedar Falls, that's helping us host a virtual career week, and 20 plus partners coming together to let students ask them questions. So yeah, I think it's really accelerating things.
Hey, Kim, Steve Weiner asked a question whether the panelists see other stakeholders, parents, administrators, policymakers expressing more openness to learner-centered education or other innovations. With your national lens, do you see more openness among those stakeholders?
In the conversations we've had, and I do want to highlight one district that has talked about parent circles, and this is Menlo Park. has been leading a series of parent circles where parents are leading the conversations. And the participation in these parent circles has surged over the past 4 weeks. I think that more of these types of structures where parents have direct input and contribution into the learning models and how learning can be adapted. I think this is just going to be part of where we are and where we're going in the future. So it just gives you an example of how a league district is putting that in place.
No, I love that. Vanessa Wilkins gave us an equity reminder in the chat window, pointing out some districts where there's still really lousy access, both to devices and internet. I guess I've been really personally shaken by how frequently that's been the case. We were not as far along as I thought we were in terms of one-to-one access, take-home devices, and access to broadband. And this pandemic has really brought that to light. So there's no question that in addition to these cool options that we're talking about, that every state, every district has work to do to have better continuity of learning plans in place by September. And while districts can't solve this problem alone, every community in America can solve this problem by with take-home devices, with community partnerships around access. Pat or David, anything you want to mention on that? Just the equity aspect.
Sure. Even in my own community, when we started our blended and personalized learning program, we had our kids start taking home their devices 7 years ago.
Right.
And all the kids were able to complete their assignments. So even though we tried to get them all on the low-cost internet, we made the assumption that they all had access at home. We found out quickly during the pandemic that that's not the case. So we're busily trying to get those last 100 students on. What concerns me is that we've done so much work in data privacy, data security, data interoperability with the League of Innovative Schools, and I see Pat shaking her head, and with Caroline actually helping. And what's happening now with devices being thrown out the window for distance learning, it could give ed tech a bad name and force people to try to go back to the way things were. And I think that we need to be really thoughtful about something like the League of Innovative Schools to help lead these districts who have made the investment now into ed tech, make it return in terms of the value.
That's great. Pat?
I would just echo what David said. And, it's not just access and device, it's also safe access and device. So all of those protocol are incredibly important. And if a child doesn't have access, it is absolutely an equity issue.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. Sherry Mosley pointed out relationships matter. Thanks for surfacing that. I think all the panelists would agree that has certainly been a lesson learned, that relationships matter a lot. As we wrap, I wonder if any of the panelists have a next step, something that we could do individually or together that would advance the path forward.
I'm very excited to learn every one of your reentry plans because we're working on ours. And my closing thought would just be that I don't think any one of us has the answer.
Yeah,
that it has to be a collaborative process.
We are all in this together, and as we were saying before we started up, next year is going to be extraordinarily complicated. We have to work together in new ways. Kim, that's why we're so happy that you're on this call. You represent one of America's most important district collaboratives, and I think your collaboration is going to have a whole new level of value next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tom. We are looking right now at our go forward plan at Digital Promise, and particularly how we can support and advance the work of not only the league districts, but in the spirit of hashtag Connect Kids Now, we're banging the drum for access and learning models that really are adaptable. So you'll be hearing more from us, and appreciate the opportunity.
David, Miyashiro, any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts, happy kids, healthy relationships on a path to gainful employment. It's not fluffy. Happy, self-awareness, self-esteem, self-efficacy, relationships, building those connections and networks, and finding work that doesn't feel like work.
It's a beautiful thing. Like our friend Carlos said, learning looks like love. And I think you described that. We appreciate it. Thanks for all the active participation. Corey, Moan, Corey Schools, Jim, all of you guys, David, thanks for an active chat. It was really awesome. I'll let you guys go, but be well, do good work, keep in touch, and we'll do another one of these summits and bring more good work to light. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Tom.
Tom.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you.